say when Elaine first approached me about speaking here and suggested to me the topic of this speech, the meaning of service, I was a little bit intimidated. It's a big topic. There's a lot to say, and I wasn't really sure that I was worthy of a topic that's this important. But the more that I thought about it, the more I saw that this was a real opportunity to speak to an issue that has really been on my mind and on my heart, given what I was doing last year, given what I'm doing here this year, and given what I'm hoping to be doing next year in representing the 1st District. I'm very blessed to have grown up in a family that prioritized and really exemplified what the meaning of service is. As many of you know, my dad, Mark, who's here, was a pastor for over 20 years. And he spent 7 of those years as the founding pastor of Calvary Chapel of Fredericksburg. And my dad, along with my mom, who of course was there with him all along, he showed really what it is, what service means. I can't tell you how many nights I saw him counseling a family that was grieving over the loss of a loved one, or working to reconcile and fix a broken marriage, or to provide spiritual guidance and solace to a soul that felt like they had no hope. But he did more than talk. My parents also, on many occasions, opened up our home to an orphan teenager that had no other place to live, or a recovering drug addict looking for a new start in life, or even a convicted criminal out on parole. They opened their home, they showed what it is to serve, what it is to sacrifice, what it is to put the good of the community over your own good. And of course, they did all that on top of raising 6 kids of their own, including 3 kids that they adopted out of some very difficult circumstances. My wife, Melody, was also blessed to grow up in a family that believed in service. Her dad was a firefighter for many years. Her mom continues to work as a church administrator. And probably the most important thing that they did in service was to adopt Melody and 2 of her brothers and put their soul, put their heart into raising those 3 kids. And what they had left, they put into their church and into their community. And you know, one of the things that really strikes me about service is the impact that it can have over generations. It's not a coincidence that Melody's older brother, Tom, who spent his early years in a series of foster homes and really had it rough growing up, has now, after finding redemption in an adoptive home, has devoted himself to working with kids in a similar background, working with special needs kids and kids that grew up in a rough environment and giving them that hope that he found. It's not a coincidence that her younger brother is just finishing up serving 2 years in the Dominican Republic as a missionary, where he's worked in some of the poorest and some of the toughest areas of the Dominican Republic to educate kids and provide career opportunities for women that didn't know that they could actually make something of themselves and have something of their own to be proud of. And Melody herself spent her years after college doing missions work in Guatemala and Thailand and Morocco. So we see that a real commitment to service not only impacts the immediate people that you're working with, but it has an impact over generations. And it was that background, seeing what service means, seeing my parents, seeing Melody's family, that really impacted my life as I made a series of major decisions. Now, the first of those came in law school, in my 3rd year of law school, when I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. I had grown up and did well enough in high school to get into a good college, whether or not you think it's the right college. And then went from there to law school. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I knew I liked to argue with people, so going into law school seemed like as good a career move as any. But I got to my 3rd year, and I was kind of being herded like a sheep into the corporate law path, because that's kind of what everybody did. You see the 6-figure salaries, and you got all this student loan debt, and so you feel like, well, this is what I guess I'll do. And so I was going into my big on-campus recruiting period, my last year of law school. And then one of those life-changing events happened, because the first day of that recruiting period was September 11th, 2001. And as basically everything shut down, and I spent the day, as we all did, watching the TV and trying to comprehend what was going on, it quickly became apparent to me that spending my life dedicated to helping big companies acquire smaller companies, or fighting over who owns a patent, or dealing with litigation, wasn't what I wanted to devote my life to. So it took me a while to figure it out, and on the counsel of my wise mother, I eventually decided to apply for a position in the Air Force JAG Corps and was fortunately accepted, and served 6 great years on active duty. But eventually, as I was getting married to my wife, I decided it was time to transition out of active duty having to move every 2 years and everything that comes with that, and transferred to reserves and accepted a position with the Social Security Administration. But then as I continued to kind of watch and see what was going on in the world, especially as we were pulling out of Iraq and we're starting to pull out of Afghanistan, it really struck me that I had never had an opportunity to actually serve in a war zone. And that was something that was important to me. And so as I thought about it and I prayed about it, it was in the later part of 2010 that I talked to my wife, Melody, and I said, you know how we really have jobs that we both like, and we have a great house and a great life and so many great friends. How would you feel if we put all that aside for a little while? And I volunteered and deployed to Afghanistan. And in one of those moments that I have frequently where I realized that I married the right woman, she said, you know, if this is something that's on your heart, I can tell that you're passionate about it, and I support you 100%. So that was something that I decided to do, and it was one of the most remarkable experiences of my life, to see the fine work, the courage, the commitment, the skill that so many of our troops show over there on a daily basis under very difficult conditions. And it was really while I was over there and seeing what we were able to do, some of the things that Gary mentioned, with standing up the National Security Court, putting together a reconciliation program, working together on a day-to-day basis with the Afghan government, as broken and dysfunctional as it was, and then at the same time seeing a Congress that really couldn't get anything done. It was that experience that convinced me that we need better leadership in our government. We need better leadership in Congress. We need people that have worked in an environment where failure is not an option. And so it was at that point that I really decided that I was going to step up and do everything I could to bring better government to this country and to provide better leadership and better representation to the 1st District here where I grew up. So that got me into the race and convinced me that this was the right thing to do. And that's the life that I've lived, and I'm certainly proud of my service. I'm even more proud of the service that my parents provided. But there's really, in the bigger picture, there's nothing unique or special about what we've done. This is the story of America. It's a story of people that sacrifice and put service to their country over their own good. We saw that most particularly in our greatest generation, in World War II, that was faced with the twin threats of a Great Depression, as well as the biggest monsters history has ever seen. We saw that with millions of men that volunteered to risk their lives on foreign shores to defend their country, while their wives and their mothers, for the first time, went into factories to build the ships and build the tanks that would win the war. We saw that with people from all stripes who planted victory gardens and bought war bonds. And, believe it or not, we, at that point, actually asked the wealthy to sacrifice as well. And they paid the highest tax rates in American history to fund the bullets and the tanks and bombs that wound up winning that war. That is the history of America. It's coming together. It's sacrificing together. It's serving together to overcome our great obstacles. And folks, you all know we have big challenges that we're facing as a country right now. The two biggest are the fact that we've got 13 million Americans out there that want to work and can't find a job. And the fact that we've got a $1 trillion deficit and counting. And those are some tough problems, but folks, these are not bigger challenges than we faced before as a country. And it's not, the problem we have is not that our problems are too big, and it's not that, as a people, we don't have the capacity to solve them. I know that we do, and I've seen it. I've seen it in the young men and women barely out of high school that sign up to put on their country's uniform and serve 6,000 miles away in a war zone. I've seen it all across the country every day in the USO volunteers that go out to airports across the country to welcome those same warriors home and express the thanks of a grateful nation. And I've seen it in rooms like this all across the 1st District, with people that are willing to give their time and their money and their energy to fight for a government that is as good and as selfless and as wise as the American people. That's the kind of people we are, and we can overcome any challenges that we have. I firmly believe that. But we need better government, because somewhere along the line, too many of our public servants lost what it means to be a public servant. Too many of our public servants have decided to ask for the most sacrifice from those who have the least, and ask nothing from those who can actually afford to give a little more. Thank you. We saw that very clearly just last year when a majority of congressmen, including our own congressman, voted for a budget that slashed Pell Grants that have provided opportunities for generations of middle-class and working-class kids to go to college, that slashed Medicaid that provides health care to disabled kids and impoverished seniors, that cut Medicare and replaced it with a voucher system, that if this had gone into effect would have raised the average senior's medical cost by $6,000 a year, and then took all those savings and farmed it into yet another big tax cut for people at the top. That's not sacrifice, and that's not service. We saw that very same Congress, too many members, including our own member, voted against the GI Bill to actually give training and education to our warriors that are coming home right now. We saw that when they chose to put the interests of millionaires over the interests of our military in agreeing to $1 trillion in cuts to the Department of Defense and the Veterans Affairs in order to protect and extend tax cuts for people at the very top. Now, folks, there is nothing to me that is more morally repugnant than cutting the VA, which is going to be tasked with caring for our next generation of wounded warriors that are coming home right now. That's somebody that has lost sight of what it means to be a public servant and to care for the people that have put their lives on the line for this country. We need better than that. Now, that's the bad news. The bad news is we've got too many folks in Washington who are fighting the president and who are more committed to fighting for their party leadership, and their corporate donors than they are actually representing the people that elect them. The good news is we have a chance to actually do something about that this November. We have a chance to fight to elect people that really do believe in public service and know what it means. And even before we get to November, we have a chance to elect people like Jack Stark, who wants to fight for his community and to serve his community. We have a chance to win this district, and this is exactly the kind of district the Democrats need to win to retake the House and to put a concept of shared sacrifice and public service back into our government. We have a chance to fight and to elect Tim Kaine, who we're going to hear a little bit more about in a minute, somebody who spent his entire life devoted to public service as a missionary, as a civil rights lawyer, and as a public servant. And we have a chance to re-elect the President of the United States, who knows what it means to ask America to sacrifice and to bring America into the 21st century. We know what our opposition is like. We know that those very same folks that are getting all these tax cuts and that are fighting for them, that they're going to fight hard, they're going to put their money, they're going to have more money than we do. But we can fight harder and we can win, and I'm very confident we will with all of our help. Thanks very much.